Step inside and follow me into the shadows of a country that comes up again and again in conversations about its exquisite cuisine, rich history, and vibrant culture. Italy. Yet, as often as this country is in the spotlight, its darker corners are rarely looked at. With this video, my intention is to change your perspective on Italy. Are you ready to discover a dark side of Italy? I hope so, because I definitely am. I am the Shadow Whisperer, and these are two Italian urban legends. I've even been there in person, wandering the winding streets of Venice to see the horrors up close. Number 1 on our list takes us straight to the house that kills. Venice's waterways are lined with luxurious residences that quickly change hands once they hit the market. All but one. It is known as Casa Dario, the house that kills. This gloomy residence was built in the late 15th century for Giovanni Dario, the secretary of the Senate of the Venetian Republic. After his death, his daughter and her husband inherited the house. But their fate was to be anything but pleasant. The husband lost all his possessions and was brutally stabbed to death, while the daughter drowned herself in the dark depths of the canal. Their young son, an innocent child, was eventually killed by unknown murderers. The three violent deaths shocked the nations and gave rise to the dark theory that the house was cursed, as it was built on an ancient graveyard. After walking through the alleys of Venice and looking at the sinister facade of Casa Dario, I could not ignore the shiver that ran down my spine. It seemed as if the walls themselves echoed the cries of the past, a somber melody telling of the tragic stories this house has witnessed. Others suggested it could be the inscription on the floor, which read, Giovanni Dario, in honor of the city genius Italy. In fact, this is an anagram of, whoever lives in this house will be ruined. She left an icy shiver on my skin. In the 19th century, the family sold the cursed house to a rich diamond merchant. But his wealth was fleeting, he lost everything and died mysteriously shortly after. The next owner met his inevitable end within the walls of the house, possibly in a gruesome murder-suicide. After that, it seemed that death would haunt any owner who had the misfortune of holding the keys to this cursed place. A suicide followed, and then came the tragic car accident, the scars of which still show on the gray asphalt. After that, a murder, a cold, inexorable event that made the inhabitants of Venice tremble. Another suicide tore apart the fragile web of everyday life. Then came another car accident, brutal and unexpected, followed by another suicide that reignited the pain and suffering. Finally came the fatal heart attack, a silent and sudden death that claimed the last victim of Casa Dario. After this series of misfortunes and tragedies, it was not surprising that the locals are now convinced that Casa Dario is a cursed house. Even those who do not believe in curses avoid the deadly house that casts its ominous shadow over idyllic Venice. Here's a warning for anyone approaching the story of Casa Dario. Sometimes the ghosts of the past are more alive than we realize. They rage in our present realities, a whisper in the wind, a sigh in the canals, a dark presence in the silent nights of Venice. The curse of Casa Dario is not just a legend, but a reflection of the dark heart of Venice that we so often overlook. For behind the glamour and beauty, Venice hides a darker side. Every stone, every facade, every gentle ripple in the canals tells a story of tragedy and death. And no place tells these stories more clearly than Casa Dario, the house that kills, the house that breathes suffering and despair. Enter if you dare, but remember, some doors are better left closed. Hidden in the gentle waves of the Adriatic Sea, not far from picturesque Venice, lies an island that inspires deep-rooted fear in the hearts of the locals, Poveglia. In 1348, when the plague that became infamous as the Black Death raged mercilessly, this remote island served as a quarantine center. Here were brought the unfortunate souls afflicted by this deadly disease. But there was no hint of healing or hope on this island, only a grim waiting for the inevitable end. There are rumors that so many people were burned and buried on Poveglia that the ground is now almost 50% human ash. A frightening notion that gives the island a deeply somber atmosphere. However, in the 19th century, Poveglia acquired an even more gruesome reputation. The island was turned into a mental hospital, but this was not a place of recovery. Instead, it became a prison of isolation where inmates often died in deep agony and despair. The caretakers could only stand by impotently, or in some cases even encouraged the madness of their charges. And yet, these harrowing stories are only the beginning of the eerie legend of Poveglia. In the twilight, the waves of the Adriatic whisper of the secrets and atrocities that lie buried deep in the soul of the island. Whoever is brave or foolhardy enough to face these mysteries should prepare for a journey that will take him to the edge of the understandable. It is said that the director of the mental hospital was not an ordinary doctor, but rather a diabolical butcher, a sadistic torturer who tortured and humiliated his patients for years in the most cruel way. Haunted by the unbearable guilt and vengeful ghosts of his heinous deeds, he too finally fell into the abyss of madness. He threw himself from the highest point of the island, the bell tower, to certain death. Surprisingly, he survived the devastating fall, but his body lay broken and shattered on the sharp rocks. Witnesses claim that at that moment, while he lay helpless and tortured on the sharp stones, a ghostly mist enveloped him and strangled him to death. This mist is said to have risen from the ground, a malignant haze that carried the dark energy of death and suffering. Some believe that it was the island itself that took revenge on the cruel director. A revenge that grew out of the deep entanglement with the dark energy of death. It is therefore not surprising that sailors sail far around Poveglia and only the bravest or most insane dare to visit the island. It is a place steeped in death and madness, more a mass grave than a home. Its dark, ominous history hovers like a portentous shadow over the gentle waves of the Adriatic. Dare to enter this cursed place if you have the courage. But be warned, some places better preserve their dark secrets and pasts in the depths of time. Poveglia is one of them, an island better left in the past.